That was the reminder to us to ask all the attendees to mute their microphones, if you would. We'd appreciate it. I'm going to hold off for about a minute or two and just let other people a chance to get on. We've got a bunch of people. And just to tell you who's here, we've got the whole board here, and Denise Nugent, who's the chair of our nominating committees here. I want to welcome you to our virtual annual meeting. This is part B, part 2 of our virtual annual meeting. The first part being the presentations that we all taped that I hope you all had a chance to look at, because there's a lot of good information there. Why don't we go ahead to the first slide with the agenda, if you would, please. This is the agenda. We're going to go through the legal issues, which is we'll have our secretary, Sally Frazier, do those. We will announce the results. Sally will announce the results of the proposal 1, which was the rollover of funds. And then Denise Nugent will announce the results of the election of our directors. I'm going to go through kind of a quick slide review of the summary of presentations that are posted on the website so that you know what's there. You can go whenever you're at your leisure, if you haven't gone already, and review that. Then we'll open it up to comments and questions. And when I do that, I'll probably start off with, well, maybe now I ought to start off with it. You should have on your screen somewhere a small box that the top of the box has an orange arrow. You can use that one to mute yourself. And it's also where, if you expand that box at the bottom, there's a question box that says questions, and it's got a box. Just below that, in very faint writing, it says type your question here. And that's where you would, if you desired that you have a question, to go ahead and type it. And so that's the way that's going to roll. I think it's time. We've given them a couple minutes, so hopefully we've got everybody on and other people will come in. So in addition to the welcome, I'd like to go ahead and thank you all for joining us this morning. We're going to run about 10 minutes on the agenda, and then there'll be time for questions and answer. So we're looking at another 50 minutes or so for Q&A. Once again, the presentations are posted on the website. Hopefully you'll get a lot of information from that and all that. So the next thing is on the agenda is to introduce Sally Frazier, who will go through our legal issues. Sally?
Thank you. Mr. President, notice has been duly given and a quorum is present. So good morning, everyone. As part of the voting procedure, residents were asked to vote to approve the carryover funds. The proposal stated, in order for the association to be eligible for lower tax rates and to avoid paying taxes on any excess revenues in any one year, the IRS regulation requires that homeowners vote to roll over excess funds from one year to the following year. The board has anticipated this surplus and recommends your approval of the following resolution. Resolved that excess funds, if any, from fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021 be rolled over to their respective following budget year 2021 and 2022 in accordance with IRS Regulation 70-604. The vote was 1,112 to approve, 10 to disapprove. The resolution has been approved. Now Denise Nugent, chair of the nominating committee, will give us the results of the election for board of directors. Denise?
Thank you, Sally. Hello, everyone. On behalf of the nominating committee, thank you to the candidates for running for the board of directors, and thank you to the residents for voting. Your newly elected directors for 2021 are Rick Beers, Daphne Kinkle, Roy Matheson, and Ray Van Cott. Congratulations and best wishes. Now I'll turn it back over to Bob.
Thank you, Denise. I offer my congratulations. You're going to have a great board next year. I know they'll do a great job for you, and congratulations to my 2 current board members who have signed up for another term of 2 years. As I go in and just go through this, I just wanted to tell everybody that a brief summary of this presentation. I'm starting off with actually the last slide in my presentation, which tells you, in a nutshell, the state of the colony is in great hands. It's excellent. We're doing well financially. Some of the presentations, let me go through those. Ray Van Cott, our treasurer, went through the financial and budget results, did a great job on that. Followed up by George Spaltoff, who updated us on the big elephant in the room that we seem to have, because this is the year of the pipes in addition to COVID. So George updated us on the drainage pipes. And then Drew Mulhare, he's our managing agent, and he's actually our general manager, went through his presentation on the community services employees and what they do, and they do a great job. So Drew did a great presentation there. Next, we had the management agent performance evaluation. That job falls to the vice president, Carmen, who has been a great vice president. She's managed this evaluation process for 3 years now, and it's slightly different this year, so it's very, very well done, and it really falls in line with what we have in our managing agent contract. So it follows the contract specifically, and she did a great job on that. Next, we had presentation from Rick Beers and Ken Spencers on the volunteer appreciation. I particularly liked, not only did he introduce the various committees, but they kind of went over highlights of some of the things that, issues that the committees faced or helped us through. And that was a great job. And I would add my appreciation and gratitude to all our volunteers, because that's really the lifeblood of Forge Colony and our HOA. Finally, well, before I did my president's remarks, Sally actually did a farewell to board members whose terms expire this year. And that's Carmen and myself and Rick and Ray. Rick and Ray now will come back for their second term. So she kind of did highlights of what we did. And I had my president's remarks. And what I tried to do was what we did last year, kind of went around the colony and talked about some of the issues that we're facing. I talk about COVID, I talk about other things, but also kind of as we go around, we talked about what things are transpiring that impact us that are outside the colony. So I think you might find that enjoyable and informative. Next. Next. Okay, we'll start with your questions. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to address the questions to various board members. And we're going to start with the questions that we received ahead of time, which is great, and we thank you for that. That was wonderful. And then we'll go into other questions that you have that have been submitted online. Drew Mulhare is off camera, but he will read the question, and then we'll determine who's going to answer that question. And I did want to just not take this myself, so I've asked the board to kind of prep up and be ready to answer some questions. So the first question we had concerns danger to pedestrians who practice social distancing walking on pathways, and George Spaltoff is geared up to answer that one.
Good morning, everyone. The question to the board is how the members consider the danger to pedestrians who practice social distancing by walking on the roadways where there are walking paths in the path of vehicles versus the inconvenience to pedestrians who do not wish to walk in the grass berm separating the walking paths from the roadways. First of all, the board is encouraging everybody to walk on the paths. And this may need that folks need to temporarily step to the side to let others pass. We suggest that walkers on the paths wear masks or have them immediately available as a safety measure, since walkers will undoubtedly encounter other walkers. Where there aren't paths, it is recommended that everyone walk on the same side of the roadway and that being the side of the roadway with the least number of cross-street intersections. It is also requested that they walk as close as practical to the edge of the road. And groups, 2 or more, walking on both sides of the street should be avoided at all times. These requests are being and will continue to be published in all of the HOA's written and electronic communications as reminders. This is all for safety. The board recognizes the danger to pedestrians that the increased usage of the paths and some overflow to the streets has caused during the pandemic. And we ask for everyone's cooperation in keeping the traffic lanes clear for vehicles by using the paths. On another related point, also about safety. The board has begun an aggressive goal to lower the speed of cars and trucks in Ford's Colony. Last week's report tells us that a speeding violation has been recorded and documented every 20 minutes. This is pretty terrible, actually. Letters are being mailed out notifying the vehicle owners of the violations. So please be mindful of the walkers. Please be mindful of the drivers. And if in any way possible, please slow down. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you. The next question dealt with the finances, and so I looked to my financial guru, our treasurer, Ray Van Cott, to answer that one. Ray?
Some guru. Good morning, everyone. The question is, when are Ford's Colony residents involved in the approval process for the levying of assessments and/or extension of assessments? So the residents are involved basically in two facets of the budget process. First of all, I need to say that the bylaws of our HOA, that which governs how we do, the actual votes are performed by the board. Residents, of course, elect the board. So there is resident input into the board members who sit to make a determination of the budget. When you look at the budget process, though, we present to the community the draft budget in early November, which this year last November I did in a virtual town hall meeting just like this. And then we invite comments or questions from the public after that meeting, and those comments and those questions go into the final deliberations of the board before they pass the budget, which usually occurs about a week to 2 weeks later. So to sum it up, resident involvement is looking at the budget draft that's presented to them at the town hall, making comments or questions into that, which the board takes into consideration, and finally, through your voting of different board members, the board members are the ones who finally pass it, and they are your representative into the budget process. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Ray. The next question I'm going to take came from a resident who wanted to know what is being done to address the conditions of the golf courses, which were saturated for much of last year, including ponds and many of the bunkers. The courses were virtually unplayable for most of the last 5 months of the year. In addition to answering that question, I really would like to do a little primer on the roles and responsibilities of the different entities. Within Ford's Colony Master Plan, we have 3 entities within what I call the boundaries, if you will, that are not part of the HOA. Those entities are Marriott Manor Club, Ford's Colony Country Club, and the Ford's Colony Realty there off of Ford's Colony Drive as you first turn in. Additionally, outside the development area of what you and I consider Ford's Colony, outside the gate, is Westport, which is part of the HOA, as well as the CCRC off of Firestone, that land that they're going to develop, and we'll talk about that later. I'm sure we have some questions on that. That development, that's part of the Ford's Colony Master Plan, but not part of the HOA. So to answer your specific question, the HOA has no authority to, we don't repair, we don't maintain the golf course. 13 of the 31 ponds are actually on HOA land. The other 18 or whatever are on the golf course. We don't maintain those either. So if your question is specific that there's some drainage issue that you have where the golf course is draining on your property or something like that, please contact community services and have them come out and look at it, and they can see what can be done. But as far as the HOA going out and pumping out bunkers, cutting the grass on the greens, the tees, we don't do that. That's not part of the HOA. We just don't do that, and because they're not parts of the HOA, so your assessments do not pay for the golf course. So hopefully you'll be able to look at that, and it just provides some clarification, because we noticed also in some of the answers to the survey, people had the idea that maybe the board was able to influence certain things over to these other areas like the country club. It's not the case. Next, we have some questions concerning the villa which is the Ford's Colony Villa proposed development. And these were quite extensive questions. So it was not just one question, there were a series of them. And so I asked Carmen if she wouldn't take that and do it. And she's going to parse some of those sub questions out to others to answer. So Carmen?
Thanks, Bob. We had 5 questions with regard to the Eagles Cliff Villas and that development area. And that obviously is right off of Ford's Colony Drive. And the first of the questions is as follows. If both Eagles Cliff Villa parcels are zoned multifamily units, why has the community not been given an opportunity to vote on accepting rented villas and said villas becoming a part of the FCHOA community? The answer to this is pretty straightforward. These parcels are part of the approved Ford's Colony Master Plan on file with the county, and they are zoned in the approved master plan as multifamily units, which can either be rental apartments or condominiums. So consequently, as long as the units comply with the master plan, the developer is not restricted against creating rental apartments. And Ford's Colony Homeowner Association cannot unilaterally vote to preclude rental apartments. The next question is what's to keep the developer of the villa properties from allowing the villa complex to become an eyesore or an embarrassment to the rest of the Ford's Colony community, putting our property values at risk? What safeguards can be put in the agreement to allow these villas to become part of FCHOA? That was absolutely something that the board gave a lot of consideration to, and we took a number of proactive steps prior to the formal sale of those 2 parcels to protect our FCHOA interests. The first step was the developer must comply with the supplemental declaration. And that is, by the way, posted on fchoa.org in the association section under documents. And the supplemental, and that runs with the parcel purchase that requires adherence to Ford's Colony architectural standards. And it also limits the number of multifamily units for those parcels to address potential issues. The second thing that the board did was institute multifamily architectural standards. These are also posted on fchoa.org in the association documents section. As a member of the FCHOA, the developer is required to adhere to the multifamily construction guidelines, which define architectural standards and site plan requirements. In addition, like any other FCHOA property owner, the developer must maintain the property to standard. We will be retaining a third-party professional inspector to ensure our construction guidelines and standards are met. The next question has to do with the impact of the villas and parking and our community resources. And I'm referring that to Ken Spencer, who has been the liaison to our facilities committee, to answer this. Ken?
Thank you, Carmen. The question is, the 74 villas could generate additional 150 people, same amount of vehicles, which would put a strain on the community resources. I'll address it in 2 parts. First, the parking. The developer must go through the county, and the county has specific standards for parking allotted for each development. Currently, the developer is planning to have over 150 plus additional parking spaces in the plan within the layout of the properties he has. And that should not pose a problem as far as parking outside of the area. The second part of it is, since as Carmen said, since this development is part of our master plan of our total capacity of 3,250 residential units, these 74 are part of that. That's part of our plan also for our facilities. So we're planning our facilities against the master plan numbers, not just the numbers that are currently here. So we don't anticipate there will be a large demand on our facilities over and above what we currently have in the plan. Our facilities committee, along with the management agent, is monitoring these facilities to make sure the usage is consistent and available for all of our users. The next question has to deal with the assessment problem, and I'll pass that over to Ray.
Fine, thank you. This question has to do with villa assessments. How will the villa assessment be structured, and who will be responsible for paying these assessments? Many of us over the years have experienced the Ford's bankruptcies and negative effect it can have on our beautiful, most sought-after community. How will the FCHOA ensure this is not the case again? All right, so we will not be assessing the individual apartments. We basically, the villa complex owner will be responsible for payment of the HOA fees under the same fee and collection policy that regulates things today. So the overall owner, the landlord, will be responsible for the fees and will be responsible for paying those fees. Our collection activities will be the same that we do today, which can eventually lead to foreclosure if indeed the fees remain unpaid. In terms of how do we protect ourselves against the bankruptcy and the like, well, we will require, as Carmen pointed out, during the process of building, the developer will be required to post pay his application fees, post security deposits, and security bonds for completion of the property. If back before, when Ford was a major development, this really was not the case. Pieces may have been left undeveloped when Ford went bankrupt, and we had to find a way to make that right. In this particular case, we are requiring before construction that adequate surety bonds and completion bonds are taken out to protect us in case indeed something does happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. And then the final question, I'll pitch to Bob about the how will we ensure that the villas are high end. Bob?
Thank you. The last question, the last part of this question from one of our owners here says the developer claims these villas will be high end. What happens when he can't rent the villas at the price he wants? What would keep him from lowering the rental price? A minimum rent should be established to coincide with the claim that these villas will be high end. The answer to that is just like we, the HOA, can't dictate what a homeowner buys or sells his or her home for. The same goes for we can't dictate what the developer has to put in and as a price point. I would offer that it's most likely, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, that the developer is going to have to go to a bank and get a mortgage or financing or something like that. And I think the bank is going to be very interested in exactly what the monthly rate is to make sure that it pencils out for a business case that they want to give the developer the money. So that's the answer to that question. I've got all kinds of paper here because we got some questions and they're overlapping. But the next questions I want to go to is a question that concerns speeding and distracted drivers being a big issue on John Pott Drive. And Ken Spencer, I'd ask if you wouldn't answer that for us.
Yes, the question that said speeding and distracted driving is still a big issue on John Pott Drive. I'd like to know what are the plans for installing a walking path along the complete John Pott Drive. And then you approved relining and the drainage pipes were preventative measures on the walking path that was installed years ago, preventing someone from getting hurt and killed by traffic along John Pott Drive. Okay, there's a lot of parts in here, but let me address the first thing, the speeding on John Pott Drive. We've had, the board has taken a lot of action to address speeding along John Pott Drive. As you know, There's been speed bumps, there's been signs put along John Pot Drive, and there's been a lot of emphasis on diverting traffic away from John Pot Drive to other entrances around the colony, such as Manchester, Williamsburg West. We've also monitored closely through speed trailers and the sign on John Pot Drive and have noticed a significant reduction in speed along John Pot Drive right now. So I think our actions are working. Currently, the average speed along John Pot Drive is 25 miles an hour, which is what we want it to be. So the speeding issue, I think, is, with our emphasis at the board, has worked out very well. To talk about the leisure trail along John Pot Drive, there's a lot of issues that come into the fact with the leisure trail, but I'll cover just a couple of them. Leisure trails were developed by the developer in his master plan for developing the area, and then turned over to the HOA to update and maintain. In this case, the developer along John Pot Drive was not Realtek, who created Ford's Colony and created the other walking trails. It was another developer previously, and then this area was annexed into Ford's Colony. And in doing so, that developer did not allow sufficient area to put additional walking trails without getting onto private property. So we have a problem there along the majority of John Pot Drive about having a leisure trail. There's just not sufficient area there to do the drainage work we need to do and put a leisure trail there for the safety of walkers along John Pot Drive without acquiring a lot of additional land from private owners right now. A study was done several years ago, and it was estimated that the cost of doing a walking trail along John Pot Drive is well in excess of $300,000. And the board at that time did not feel that that was worth something pursuing for our residents in that. We are, on a positive note, we have the availability of HOA-owned land down around the lake there at the bottom of John Pot Drive near Edinburgh. And next year, our Roads and Property Management Committee is going to do a study to assess the feasibility of extending a leisure trail from Edinburgh up through all that area along that lake to see if that's a thing that we can feasibly do and alleviate some of the problem on the bottom and give our residents a chance to kind of have a nature trail walk along that pond. So that's going to happen in next year, and we'll see what they come up with, and we'll keep you advised as that goes. I hope that answers your question.
I think the next question that I've got, Ken, is a follow-on, and it says, if the homeowners own the property up to John Pot Drive, why do we pay our employees to mow their property? Ken?
Okay, there is a small grass area as part of the road easement between the road and the homeowner's property. And we use this area mainly for helping the drainage issues. As you see, it's kind of deep down to collect the water and run it off. And therefore, our maintenance people mow that grass in that area to allow that drainage walk off and keep that small area clean and presentable to our standards. But that's only for the drainage. It's not planned for a trail because that previous developer didn't put additional property for a trail.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And then another question for you concerning the RV and boat storage facility.
Okay, this question has come up several times, and we did an extensive article on the new RV storage facility and why we have charge fees for that facility. The short answer is there's a very limited number of spaces in that facility, so it's not available to every single person in the colony to store something there. We have our management agent manages people that want to store things and will pay their fee. And then we put that fee in the general fund, and it is actually paying back the cost of doing that improvement in that storage facility area. It's really quite a nice area right now, and we have to keep it that way. So we're going to be doing maintenance on that area to maintain that storage facility area as an amenity for our residents that want to use it.
Okay, thank you, Ken. We're going to switch gears here, and I've got a question that talks about approval of who approves the new equipment for the maintenance crews, and I asked Rick Beers, who's our board liaison to the RPM committee, to answer that. Rick? You're muted, Rick. You're muted.
That happens frequently. The board approves the annual budgets, and within those budgets are new equipment purchases. So the board approves the purchases. The management agent acquires that equipment, and we review results monthly. So clean visibility on equipment purchases. As far as the what we do with the used equipment or the old equipment, they're typically traded in with the seller as one would any car, for example, or in most cases, they're beyond useful life, and they're in some cases sold, many cases sold as scrap.
Okay, thank you. And a follow-on question, Rick, about monitoring and supervising of maintenance crews.
Yeah, you know, I guess the quick answer is that the management agent employees are supervised by the management agent. So it's that's typically how that happens formally. Beyond that, though, one thing we all have to realize is that in the first place, the board is extremely pleased with the work done by our employees, quality and quantity. We continue to be very proud of it. We have to understand, though, that the community is their office. And in many cases, when they are between jobs, checking in with the boss, checking in with on the project plan itself, they'll look like they're on the phone and just killing time, but they aren't. They're working. And even when they take a break, they're in full view in their office. So perception may be one thing, but in reality, we're really happy with the way they perform their work.
Thank you. I note that I missed one of the questions earlier, and so I'm going to ask Ray Van Cott to answer this one. And the question is, relative to Ray's excellent presentation, I have three questions. One, there was $105,000 surplus. $35,000 was used to defray 2021 budget increases of $129,000. Why wasn't the extra $105 used for this purpose? And then there are two follow-on questions that Ray will read before he answers them. Ray?
All right, so let's take the first question first. The $105,000 surplus. Now we're talking about a budget surplus where we actually spent less in expenses and earned a bit more in revenue, so a total roughly $105,000. The question is correct. The board voted to take $35,000 of that and apply it against the deficit that we established for the budget of 2021 to keep our dues increase down. Now, what the other parts, the other remaining money that I think that I covered in my presentation, another $35,000 was moved to the CIF fund. This is the fund that we have used for building future amenities for the community. So we moved $35,000 into that, and the remaining $35,000 is what we asked to carry over into 2021 that Sally covered. That was part of the items that the residents voted on, so that money was carried over to 2021. Now that sort of like flows into the second part of the question, which is there's about $173,000 of cash available at the end of 2020. Why wasn't that used to fund the rest of the increase in budget, so the dues would be actually smaller? Here we're talking about cash and cash flow, and we need to have excess cash on hand because the revenue stream is not necessarily consistent. We receive our money in 4 different quarters, yet our bills come in as incurred. So we use this cash carryover, this $173,000. We actually are using this money to pay bills when indeed we don't have the revenue stream here. It keeps us from having to go out and borrow money in case in one particular week or one particular month we have more money that has to go out than we actually have on hand because of the way the dues assessments and revenues are paid. So this money is really needed for cash flow, just like you would keep money in your checkbook that may be different, it may be more or less than when you actually get in wages because of the way your bills come in. So we keep that for cash flow. That leads us to the third question, which actually we have two different people asked about this. The $53,000 that we did not spend in the capital reserve, the savings and capital reserve, is that accrued? What happens to that money? When we don't spend the money or won't spend capital reserve money, that money stays in the capital reserve. And over the course of time, that money will be used to actually reduce future demand of funds in subsequent years. We had $53,000 carried over. We didn't expect to have it. So when we looked at what the budget was for 2021, we said, well, we have the carryover, so that basically we don't need all of that money. So it it's carried over, it's accrued, another word, and it's used then to reduce future contributions into the capital reserve. So I think, I hope I've answered those questions, and if not, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. I also have another one for Ray. Well, I think this is actually going to go to Ken Spencer as our facilities liaison. 2020 financial results and 2021 key project expenses. Pool salt systems. Aren't these pretty new? Why do they need to be replaced? What does it mean to be replaced and or upgraded? Is our new understanding about these needs now built into our capital reserve model and plan for future operational budgets? Ken, would you address that, please?
I certainly will. We've had a lot of work done with our pools to maintain the water quality of the pools so that it's in suitable condition for all our swimmers to have. In consultation with our pool management, pool cleaning people and that, we found out that we did not have enough salt filters to maintain the pool chemistry for the load of the people that we are planning to push into the different pools this year because more people were around in COVID. So in 2021 budget, we're purchasing additional, in fact, they are already installing in this week, additional salt filters, which will help maintain our chemistry in both sets of our pools so that we can use them more often next year and not have to supplement the actual pool chemistries with additional materials as we go on. This is actually going to be a long-term savings for us in the long run on maintaining the pools and make it more available to all of our swimmers next year. It is a new way of doing things, but we have planned for that. We've also budgeted the money in future to maintain and upgrade those pool chemistries and pool pumps.
Thank you, Ken. This next question I'm going to toss to Ray, and it's basically says, where can I find the amount that's contributed each year to the capital reserve? How's that figured? Ray?
All right, so that's actually 2 questions you asked me. You can find how much that we're going to put in the capital reserve each year during the budget presentation. Now, when you ask of how that's determined, the capital reserve model has all of our assets that are greater than $5,000, and so you're talking about trucks, you're talking about tractors, you're talking about vehicles, and on and on. There's hundreds, literally hundreds of items that we have that are in the capital reserve model. Each of these has a useful life, And we basically put aside money for the eventual replacement of that over the useful life. And so there's a schedule there that goes out right now well past 2030, which lists all our items and how much that we have to put aside each year for their eventual replacement. So when it comes to budget time, we take the model, we run the model, and it goes ahead and actually gives us the number that we have to put into the budget to satisfy our savings into the capital reserve each year. The treasurer presents that to the board and is presented to the community during the budget presentation.
Thank you, Ray. This next question is on, can an explanation be provided as to how the FCHOA is prepared and will respond to major emergency events that impact Ford's Colony? And turn that one over to Ken Spencer. I think you've got the answer for that one, don't you, Ken?
Right. And the short thing is, our HOA, as I explained in the tape segment on the volunteer appreciation, has under the Security Committee an emergency preparedness subcommittee that includes certified emergency response team people. This subcommittee develops and updates plans to respond to most anticipated emergencies. These plans include procedures to engage with local, state, and FEMA officials to request assistance if needed. The HOA security staff also has a working relationship with our James City County Police, Fire, and Security staff to leverage their expertise and to elicit their support when needed. The HOA has an agreement with the county for natural disaster waste removal disposal from our private streets. The HOA uses security at the John Pott Gatehouse and maintenance at the Community Services Building for coordinating emergency response. And both of these buildings have emergency generators.
Thank you, Ken. That concludes the pre-questions that we got ahead of time. So hopefully we've had an opportunity to receive questions from some of you that have typed questions in as during this presentation. And so I'm going to call on Drew Mulhare, who can read the question for us, and then we'll determine who we're going to parcel it out to talk.
Bob, we received a question regarding the villas, perhaps clarifying the comment about assessments. The question is, will the villa owner be paying the same assessments that each individual lot owner pays for each rental unit?
Ray, you want to take that one? I think it's a pretty easy yes. No, you're muted now, Ray. You're muted. Okay. Try and unmute you, Ray.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The organizer muted me, so it wasn't responding. Anyway, the answer is just like Eagles Cliff. Eagles Cliff plays the residents of Eagles Cliff pay their assessments per unit. That's exactly how the assessments are going to go for the villas. It'll be per unit, not per building.
Okay. SThank you. Drew?
And Bob, this question is regarding the Fry Properties plans across Firestone Drive, across News Road. Will there be a traffic light plan for that particular area?
We'll go ahead. I'm going to let Sally Frazier, who hadn't had a chance to talk after she did her legal issues. So Sally's got an article I think you've prepared in the Talk of the Colony. So Sally, why don't you take this one if you would? Muted. Unmute her. Okay, Sally? No.
I'm now unmuted. Is that correct?
That is
Am
correct.
unmuted? Okay. I was going to say, I'm going to give you a little more information than just the background to the answer to the question about the traffic light. We recently had a presentation by Fry Properties out of Norfolk and Retirement Unlimited out of Roanoke, who together are going to own and are going to develop the property directly across from our Firestone entrance. I want to emphasize that there's been no approvals from James City County on the plans. So what I'm going to talk to you about is only the current concept for the property. Rock Bella Fry Properties started the presentation with a list of 4 guiding principles they said they had. That is, they use world-class master planners to integrate with the site. They build with narrow streets, small lots, and pedestrian-scaled streetscapes. They pride themselves on their great architecture, and they emphasize the quality of life. The independent living section. This is broken into 2 sections. One is independent living, one is continuing care. The independent living section is anticipated to have 278 units, ranging in size from 800 square feet to 3,000 plus square feet, with the potential for an elevator on any 2-story homes. 9 homes were described, including condos, bungalows, townhouses, single-family options. There will be narrow alleys behind the homes for the garages. In the continuing care section, 230 rental units are planned with independent living, assisted living, and memory care. They intend to have at least 1 restaurant/bistro, which will be open to the public, and pride themselves on having Retirement Unlimited University, which means they have regularly scheduled classes. All amenities in both sections are available to the entire community. And they are, at this point, considering having Ford's Colony residents being able to use the restaurant and attend their Retirement Unlimited University. Currently, oops, I just lost my thing. Currently, there's a moratorium on new housing in James City County until January 2022. So based on that projected plan, there will start breaking ground sometime in 2023, with the first housing in the independent living section to be available mid-2024. Continuing care area requires more certifications and could be ready by the end of 2024. This is all a current concept with no approvals having been done at all, nothing having been submitted. When the plans are approved by James City County, we'll hold a town hall meeting with Fry and Retirement Unlimited to see the final concept and allow for questions. Some point along there, I left one thing out. In the continuing care section, all of the properties will be rental. There will be no purchase, single family ownership. In the retirement area, independent living section, there will be mostly privately owned, but there may be some rentals. Okay, now the specific question was the traffic light. As they present their plan, one of the things James City County is going to do is going to review traffic studies, and that will be part of the discussion of accepting their plan for the community. At this point, we have no say in whether or not there's a light put there. It is a county concern, and they will handle that process. That's it.
Thank you, Sally. Yeah, I just reiterate what Sally said. The proposal, their conceptual proposal that was presented to us has not been presented to the county yet. And as Sally pointed out, the county is the one that determines through their traffic studies, et cetera, what happens and needs, is a traffic circle needed? Is a light needed? Is stop sign sufficient? They'll determine that through their things, but there will be an opportunity for public comment on the proposal. But, I just want to reiterate, one of the things Sally mentioned was the moratorium. That moratorium is on development and rezoning. So if you want to rezone what you have, then you've got to go in, and that's the moratorium on the rezoning ones. If it's already been approved in the zoning, as Carmen explained for the villas, that's different, as we understand it. Drew, we have another one?
Yes, sir. If I could just make a quick clarification, perhaps I spoke too quickly. Someone asked, where is this Fry property? It's across News Road and outside our Firestone exit. Bob, the next question is regarding street signs. Some street signs in some neighborhoods need to be painted. Is there a plan to do this in 2021?
Rick, can you handle that as our liaison to RPM?
I want it noted that I remembered to unmute.
Thank you.
Ongoing maintenance to these signs is Well, it's ongoing. And based on this comment, we'll review it within the committee. We'll take a look at which signs particularly are issues and we'll update them. But definitely, yes, we do not want our signs to go unpainted, untouched up. We'll take a look at it.
Rick, if I may, is there an issue that somebody might point out about the color? Since our stop signs are in the neighborhood are blue versus what people typically see as red. Is that another issue that you would look at?
Yeah, that comes up every once in a while. And when it does, we do consider it. There's a clear distinction. Whenever we have major roads like Edinburgh and St. Andrews, intersections there are red, and for intersections that are secondary, the developer made the decision early on that such signs should fit with the signage look and feel. So that's why they're blue. We continue to believe that we're better off with secondary stop signs being blue and primary signs being red. But we need to continue to reinforce to the community that that doesn't mean that these blue stop signs don't say stop, because they do. And every once in a while, we'll reach out to the community and with a common reminder that full stops are really necessary at all stop signs, whether they're red or blue. Bob, did
Thank
that?
you. Yes, it does. Thank you.
So
Drew?
Bob, the next question regards the resident survey. What was the response rate and how does that compare with previous years?
Okay, do you have that information, Carmen?
I don't have it like readily in front of me, but I can say it was consistent with prior years. I want to say it was around a little north of 40%.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think one of the things that's interesting is this year versus what we did last year is we opened it up to anyone, any of the owners that have individual email addresses registered with community services. That means that if your wife or your spouse has or whoever has an email address, an adult in the residence, then they could actually answer it. So we got more responses, but the percentage is, as Carmen noted, approximately what we had last year. But we did have a bigger response because we opened it up to further people. Anything else on that, Drew?
No, sir. Going back to the Eagles Cliff Villas, the plan, we all know that we're just dealing with the conceptual plan right now, but as we saw in the resident survey, it did generate a lot of interest and we know the board is focused on it. So this is a kind of a two-part question, clarifying assessments in two ways. One, will the complex owner, if a rental unit is vacant, are they still be required to pay the assessment on that? And then secondly, as if the board issues a special assessments like it recently did with the drainage pipes, would those special assessments also apply to the villa?
Yeah. Let me take that one, and then if somebody else wants to jump in, they can. The question about the assessments, yes, they pay the owner, that's who all we can get, is he will pay the assessments on all of them. There will be a point in time when, through certificate of occupancy or whatever, when the villas are ready to be occupied, that'll start the clock that he starts paying assessments. And whether it's vacant or occupied, once the clock is started on the certificate of occupancy or whatever it is, he'll pay the assessments. Additionally, yes, that owner will pay a special assessment should a special assessment be levied. Anybody else have anything to add on that? Okay, Drew?
Bob, we have a question about, as we know, both Virginia has already enacted a minimum wage rate and an eventual sequence to $50 per hour, and there's national discussion on a federal minimum wage. Would that affect the HOA employees?
I really asked you if you couldn't answer that, because my answer would be we currently pay most, if not all, of our employees above the $15. But why don't you answer that, since you're the one that signs the checks for them?
I'd be happy to. Certainly our employees are subject, we as the employer, I should say, are subject to both state and federal minimum wage laws. We, as the president noted, we do have it would affect us. We're in Virginia. It's a sequence over a 4 to 5 year period. So we're anticipating for that. Quite frankly, the first impact that we anticipate in 2021 will affect those on the lower pay scale, which is our temporary workers, our lifeguards work at the summer, quite frankly. As far as most of our employees are generally above $13 an hour. So that impact would be more delayed in terms of the budget impact to the homeowners association. Certainly if it comes down from the federal level to enact $15 per hour on a more immediate basis, we're going to have to deal with that and schedule that out for the board's review.
Thanks, Drew. I think that answers it. Anything else?
Some more interest coming along the leisure trail questions on John Pott. Some suggestions as to whether the board has looked into a sidewalk and curb immediately alongside the road to take up less space. Have residents has the association contacted residents living along John Pott as to their likelihood of donating property as needed to the HOA. Other ideas about the sidewalk, I think, basically generally could be deferred to the Roads and Project Maintenance Committee for further investigation.
Yeah, I would say that. I was going to ask Rick if he'd comment, but I think he already did. That's one of the things on the agenda, on the minds of the Roads and Project Maintenance Committee. They want to look into this, and so that certainly will be something you can look into. But it's more than just the land; it's also the whole drainage structure and everything. Because the last thing we want to do, given all our rain recently, is dam up, a good drainage structure that we've got drainage avenue there. So yes, that will be looked into when Roads and Project Maintenance takes that on. And anything else?
I think we've covered all of the questions received so far in one way or another, except that there was another question about assessments for the villas. Would assessments come in on those villa apartments prior to a certificate occupancy? And that again is in relationship. Single family lots are assessed when they are recorded. If you don't mind me answering this, single family lots are assessed when they're recorded, not necessarily yet sold. And of course, all of our lots now are owned and in the resale market, so that really doesn't apply anymore. But for multifamily, the assessment does start with a certificate occupancy. It does not start when the plans are initially approved or construction of the building starts. However, a lot of that revenue was anticipated in the idea of the application fees and other fees that are noted in the multifamily ARC handbook.
Great, thank you, Drew. I'd like to, kind of pose a question and then answer the question, if you will. Now, I've got a couple others that I think I'm going to pose to some of the board members, but one of them was, if you've been a resident for some time, you know that one of our goals for the last 2 years has been to extinguish our unfulfilled developer proffers. These are much incentives that a developer would offer to the county to go ahead and approve their development. So we had proffers out there hanging over us that had about a financial tag of about $1.5 million hanging over us, that should we not be able to extinguish these proffers, that we'd have to do, we, the HOA, would have to do, because the county sees us as the successor to the developer. And a lot of these proffers, really, the way that we're developed, we're 90 some odd percent, built out, weren't really needed, such like making 4 lanes on Williamsburg West, putting traffic lights in various different places and things like that. So we worked with the county for the last 2 years, and we were able to, the great work of Drew and our lawyer, Sue Tarley, we were able to get the county convinced that we ought to extinguish those unfulfilled developer proffers, in exchange for which we offered that we'd build a right turn lane off of Long Hill Road into Forge Colony Drive, which will serve all of our residents. I want everybody to know, because I talked earlier about, the people that participate in different things that aren't part of the HOA. We have what we call undeveloped parcels along Forge Colony Drive, which would be most impacted by not having that right turn lane. And those are was it Windsor LLC, which is a parcel that's across from the country club over by Marsh Hawk 1. It was the parcels that Brian subsequently has recently purchased from a company called Redis, which is a subsidiary of the owner of Wells Fargo. So we negotiated with them, and the 3 of us, put in money or signed agreements, supplemental agreements, saying that we participate together to fund any necessary improvements. So that necessary improvements piece for the FCHOA was about $30,000. What we've done is the FCHOA in the year 2014, I believe, maybe 2013, George would remember because he was there. Anyway, we signed a shared maintenance agreement when the developer turned over Forge Colony Drive for us to maintain in 2013 or 2014. That shared maintenance agreement has four parties. It's the Country Club, the Marriott Manor Club, it's FCHOA, and to a lesser extent, it's the Forge Colony Realty things, because those are the ones that put traffic on Forge Colony Drive. And that's been working well since we did it. Every year we provide a budget to our partners as to how much we're going to need for improvements, maintenance for the coming year, so that's all shared. It also was shared, the money to do our share, our FCHOA share of the right turn lane. So that brought our bill down to about $15,000 from whatever it was, which we already have. We've gotten the money from all the other partners, shared maintenance agreement partners, and Windsor LLC, Redis, when they were owning it, we got it from them. And so we've got that money, it's all set. We're going to start construction. I'm looking over at Ryan, who's in the room with me, hopefully in the end of February, March timeframe, when we get everything approved. So that money is all set, and it's not us paying the whole $90,000 or whatever the cost is going to be for that. So we just wanted to point that out. The other thing I thought we'd talk a little bit about, and I got Rick Beers all prepped up for this. He's our board liaison to the technology committee, because a lot of things about technology come up, some dissatisfaction with some of the technologies and things like that. So Rick, do you want to talk about that? Muted.
I was reaching down just as I started talking, a little late. Within the survey, for example, Bob, there were a number of questions that came up on 2 topics having to do with technology. One was FCHOA.org, our resident website, and the other was in internet overall, internet performance and speeds overall. I can quickly touch on both, and if any of you have any other further questions that are listening in, feel free to send me an email. I'll put you in touch with our technology team. As for FCHOA.org, I guess in the short term, what we hear is that it's difficult to use, information is hard to find, and it's often dated. the information that they do find, and we can certainly understand it. In the short term, the Communications Committee has been enhancing the website as they can over the past couple of years, and that'll certainly continue this year, particularly based on the comments we received in this year's survey. But there's a fundamental problem that we are beginning now to address. When I say we, I mean the Technology Committee. The FCHOA platform is, well, outdated. And there's very little that we can do to help this elephant tap dance. As one example, think of a bookstore 15 years ago, a bookstore that was laid out similar to libraries at the time. You had to walk into that bookstore and really search for what you wanted, and it certainly wasn't easy. You needed a lot of help. It just was a long experience. Now, online bookstores can easily find things with a click of a mouse. And these systems, these platforms will even help you intuitively by giving you examples of what you might like that you haven't even thought of, based upon the interest that you provide and your previous purchases. Now, picture in your mind's eye FCHOA.org as one of those bookstores 15 years ago. And you can easily envision what's possible now with a safe, secure, and interactive community platform. The Technology Committee has this on their radar, believe it or not, and in our developing long-range IT, or if you will, information technology plan. Secondly is, the comment about internet speeds, and I must admit, I've had the same thoughts. We all have, and it's typically, we need faster and more reliable internet service, particularly those that are coming here and having to work from home. What we hear is that Cox is terrible, service is terrible, there are outages, and the question is always the same: why can't we get files? Why are we keeping files out? First, to the question of files itself, have to stress that FCHOA does not have a contractual relationship with Cox or Verizon. The franchise agreements that were made with Cox, for example, are held at the James City County level. And within the community, easements for laying the cable early on were granted by the developer, along with all the other underground utility services. Simply put, currently Fios is just not interested in having to lay additional cable, which becomes extremely and prohibitively expensive once the lots are developed. And we know we've asked. We actually hired a consultant to help us with Verizon 3 years ago, and they just weren't interested. On a broader scale, as for Cox, our issues are common. They're common everywhere, not just here. Cable and its successor, which is referred to as fiber to the home, is just prohibitively expensive to retrofit throughout existing developments. There's just not the revenue potential for them to pay for that upfront capital cost. So we're kind of stuck, and the cable providers are kind of stuck. The solution of the problem, and I'm going to avoid getting techie here. The solution to the problem is a new technology referred to as 5G, which I'm sure many of you have heard come up in commercials. We're beginning to hear 5G without a whole lot of detail of what it is. It basically means 5th generation wireless and mobile. It's faster, much faster, carries much more bandwidth than existing in-ground cable networks. Within a few years, these 5G networks are going to expand and will be available to communities like ours. The Technology Committee has actually been discussing, and right now we refer to this as a blue sky initiative. We're beginning to discuss, given the size and presence that we have within the county. We have 8% of the county's population, for example, within our gates. Given our influence that we have on the county, we actually see a potential in the future, not now, for offering FCHOA as a 5G pilot, perhaps to Verizon. more later on that. So I guess there's right now we have to just deal with this and do the best we can. Remember, by the way, that Cox has different plans. Cox has entry level, they have basic, they have enhanced, and negotiating with Cox and obtaining a higher speed plan is certainly possible. That would improve service, but for the time being, there's very little we can do. I hope, Bob, that gets at it. It's hard to describe this in a non-technical way, and I hope I did that.
Oh, you did. Thank you. I think that's great. I assume that we still don't have any more questions, Drew. So I think it's about that time to wrap up. We've kept these people here now for an hour and 10 minutes, and we appreciate your participation. And by way of a farewell for at least two of us, I want to say, because this is my last meeting, and I'll let Carmen say her farewells. It's her last meeting. Thank you so much to all of our owners, and as well as our volunteers. That really, as I said before, is the lifeblood of it. And for me personally, it's been a real pleasure working with the boards, the 4 boards that I've worked with. Very, really dedicated to doing the best for Ford's Colony, and I appreciate all their help. It's great to be the boss. You kind of just get good people around you and give them their lead and let them do their great job. So to my board colleagues, thanks. Special thanks to Carmen. She's been a valiant supporter and did a lot of work. Thank you. Carmen, do you have anything?
I would just echo how much I have been honored to serve on the board, and it's been a delight working with my board colleagues and all of the standing committee members. We are so fortunate in Ford's Colony to have people with such a wide array of talent, and also who are willing to give their time to serve in the greater good of our community. So thank you. And I'm sure with our new board, we're going to have a good handoff as we continue the relay race, and Bob and I pass the baton.
Okay, with that, thank you, Carmen. Oh, thank you all. Appreciate it. Yeah, Drew, did you have something you wanted to say? Or was that just Bob?
I just want to note, we do have a couple questions that were really clarifications or questions perhaps already answered but not heard. And I just want to assure the folks that we have those questions on file here, and we will respond to them by email next week.
Okay, thank you. That's great. With that, Rick, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, you and Carmen aren't going to get away with this easy. Look, it was mentioned in our last board meeting. I need to mention it with everyone that's on the call right now. This has been a tough 2 years, particularly 2020, between COVID, social unrest, everything going on this year. Communities like ours have really struggled to keep themselves moving forward. We're one of the rare ones. And we have you two to thank for the leadership in it. We're exiting the year better than we started it, and that's something you two can be pretty proud of. You'll be getting something a little personal later, but for now, public recognition is important. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and we'd be remiss if we didn't thank our dedicated staff, Drew and Sally and all their employees. They really make the engine go, and we'd be lost without them. So thank you. With that, I move that we adjourn. Thank you and goodbye for now. Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.